The Russia-Ukraine war is increasing in intensity day by day. The Russian army is struggling hard to defend itself in the occupied territories, but the Ukrainian army is repelling the Russian invaders from Ukrainian territory with its successful operations. The strategic attacks of the Ukrainian army shock the Russian army every time, and the Russian army suffers huge losses as a result of these attacks. Fierce clashes are taking place in Donetsk, Luhansk and Zaporizhia oblasts of Ukraine, because these regions are of great importance for both sides. We can say that the war is slowly approaching Crimea. The Ukrainian army is doing a very good job in these regions as well. It is even going beyond the occupied territories and achieving unbelievable successes on Russian territory. The Ukrainian army is destroying important points belonging to the Russian occupiers on Russian territory and organizing operations that the Russian army never expected. The Ukrainian army carries out its most effective attacks in the air, so much so that the Russian army is unable to prevent the Ukrainian army's airstrikes. The Ukrainian Air Force's bombs, unmanned aerial vehicles, or a suddenly launched missile inflict great damage on the Russian army within seconds. The role of the Ukrainian Air Force in this war cannot be underestimated. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine announced that the regions that have become the center of the war. These were the Donetsk, Luhansk and Zaporizhia oblasts. For the Russian invaders, occupying these territories was one of the most critical steps. That's why the Russian army has been organizing brutal operations in these regions, but they have never achieved the desired success. This is because the Ukrainian Air Force acts very strategically in these regions and identifies important points belonging to the invaders as targets. The Russian army suffers huge losses in these regions. The problems it is already experiencing are exacerbated by the attacks organized by the Ukrainian Air Force. Unable to solve these problems and overcome its major shortcomings, the Russian army is subjected to numerous attacks in these regions. The power of the Russian army against the Ukrainian army is decreasing. Over the past few days, the Ukrainian Air Force has carried out highly effective and successful operations. These attacks have caused great damage to the Russian army, because the Air Force destroyed very strategic points for the Russian invaders. The Russian army could not prevent the destruction of ammunition depots, command centers and anti-aircraft missile complexes. The Russian army, especially in recent days, is facing a major ammunition shortage, so much so that Russian soldiers are dying on the battlefield due to lack of ammunition. The lack of ammunition is such a serious issue for the Russian army, but the Russian army's ammunition problem is increasing day by day, because the Ukrainian army is blowing up the ammunition depots of the Russian invaders one by one. The 128th Mountain Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian army carried out an operation against a Russian occupation center in Vaslivka, Zaporizhia region. This targeted center was built for Russian soldiers to communicate with each other. The Ukrainian army cut the communication between the Russian army, putting the Russian soldiers in a very difficult situation. Donetsk Oblast is one of the most important regions that has become the center of the war. There are fierce clashes in this region. In the past days, the Ukrainian army has destroyed many important points belonging to the Russian invaders in this region. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine made some statements about the attack. Sharing these statements on its social media account, the ministry reported that the control points of the invaders' missile and artillery units, 3 ammunition depots and 2 logistics centers were destroyed. Many attacks were organized to destroy these areas, and 13 important points were destroyed in the fires. The footage captured during these attacks quickly went viral on social media, and everyone who saw it was shocked by the severity of the fires. The area was in complete chaos. Explosions were taking place and fires were breaking out immediately afterwards. The fires were tens of meters long and so intense that the smoke reached up to the sky. The weapons, explosives and equipment in the ammunition depots added to the intensity of the fire. This horrible sight was terrifying to behold. The Ukrainian Air Force was indeed carrying out successful strikes, but a new piece of news would only add to the success of the Air Force. Ukrainian Air Force representative Yuri Ignat announced this new development on his social media account. He stated that the Ukrainian Air Force has a new missile system to use. Ignat wrote the following in his statement: 6 Kinzhal missiles were fired across Ukraine. This is the first time this has happened. Kinzhal is a Russian-made air-launched nuclear-capable hypersonic ballistic missile with a range of 2,000 kilometers and can reach a speed of 12 Mach. This new missile system will have a significant impact on the Ukrainian Air Force's airstrikes. But the success of the Ukrainian Air Force is not only in the systems it uses. The Ukrainian Air Force is achieving extraordinary successes through strategic decisions and well-thought-out techniques. Let's take a look at how the Ukrainian Air Force conducts its strikes. Before launching attacks and conducting operations, the Ukrainian Air Force sends reconnaissance drones to the area they have chosen as a target. The flights carried out by these drones identify military and strategic points in the region, and the coordination and location information obtained at the moment is transmitted to the Ukrainian Air Force soldiers. Meanwhile, the Russian occupiers shoot down the drones as soon as they see them flying overhead. Russian soldiers and Russian officials rejoice that they shot down the drones or think that this is a success. But this is not the case, because Russian soldiers are not aware of the strategic path that the Ukrainian army is following. So Ukrainian soldiers are already taking the risk that the drones they sent into the region will be shot down. What is important for them is the information that these reconnaissance drones gather. Once this step is completed, it is not difficult for the Ukrainian Air Force to destroy the detected areas. Using missiles or artillery systems, the Ukrainian Air Force destroys important areas belonging to the Russian invaders. The Russian army is suffering a lot of losses due to the successful attacks of the Ukrainian Air Force. Russia's losses since the beginning of the war are really hard to keep up with. At the beginning of the war, it was on the offensive, but now it is completely on the defense. So much so that the Russian army had to withdraw from 70% of the territory it occupied, because it became unable to defend itself against the successful attacks of the Ukrainian army. The superiority of the Ukrainian army in the war and its progress is being carefully watched by the whole world. The Ukrainian army has crossed the occupied territories and started to organize attacks on Russian territory. The losses of the Russian army deepened day by day. We have listed the losses of the Russian army since the beginning of the war. Let's take a look together. 163,320 military personnel, 3,506 tanks, 6,823 armored combat vehicles, 2,552 artillery systems, 504 reactive spread fire systems, 265 air defense systems, 305 aircraft, 290 helicopters, 5,401 automotive and tank equipment, 18 military ships and boats, 907 cruise missiles, 2,145 unmanned aerial vehicles, 258 special missions, 4 operational tactical missile systems. These losses suffered by the Russian army are extraordinarily high. It seems that the Russian army will not be able to resist the Ukrainian army much longer, because the Russian army is not only losing its strength with the losses it has suffered, the Russian army is literally disappearing against the Ukrainian army, which is gaining strength with the help of the West and Europe. It is only a matter of time before Putin gives up his decision to invade. What do you think? Do you think Putin will give up his decision to invade? Will the losses of the Russian army be compensated? What do you think about the tactical attacks of the Ukrainian Air Force? Do not forget to leave your thoughts in the comments.
Thanks for watching. You can support us by subscribing to our channel.